guys, my name is Audrey Shantz and I'm a watercolor artist and a watercolor teacher. And today we are going to paint these sweet little leaves that you will be able to use in any floral arrangement ever. So let's go ahead and... Okay, here's the supplies that we're going to need for today. It's just a regular pencil. You see mine doesn't even have an eraser. We'll just use a little kneaded eraser. This is a round Winsor & Newton size 10 watercolor brush. I have a little square of watercolor paper. This one is 3 inches by 3 inches. Here is my paint set, and I can link that as well. And then you need to have some water and a towel or some paper towel. And that's it. So we will go ahead and get started. So for now, you just need your pencil and your eraser. And my biggest tip on sketching is always to press lightly with your pencil so that you can easily erase, which means you can really be free with your sketching. And when we do something like this, I usually just find whatever is sort of the longest stem. So you can do any variation of these. I'm going to start at the corner so I have a little bit more length here. Let me zoom in for you. That's better. And I'm going to kind of come up with a bit of a curve towards the other corner. Then I'm going to try to get in a big leaf like this. I think for this technique, it's kind of nice when you have space to be able to just like implement the painting and the color. So let's maybe do one just like this. We will take this from the bottom of the stem, we'll come up and away, curve outward. I'm going to move that actually up and away a little bit more. See what I did? I wanted more space for my leaf. And so now, and a leaf is kind of like a smiley face on one side, a smiley face on the other, where they just meet. It almost looks like kind of a squished football. And if your leaf looks different, that's great too. Any shape will really work. Then I'm going to come up and out and away from my stem again and do a little one here. Then I want something over to the right. So you see it's not exactly like the first one, but like it shouldn't be. It's not like that in nature anyway. And that's what's kind of great about leaves. They can kind of be anything, okay? So if you like your sketch, great. If you don't, go ahead and kind of use your eraser, shift something around. Let's say I wanted this one bigger. That's why we press so lightly with our pencil. There, we made it a little bit bigger. And if you like it, then go ahead and move your pencil and eraser out of your way. And we will work on making up our paints. So I'll just sort of show you what I've got here, but we're going to make up our puddles together anyway. So I have got a lighter green and a darker green, and for today that's really all we need. But let's make those puddles together. So I'll move it like this. I'm putting my brush into my water, and I'm going to grab a light green, and I've got this one right here. You see how I'm kind of getting a bunch of paint off of there. I'm going to swipe it onto my palette, and then I'm going to go straight into my water, add water to it so that this creates a puddle. I'm going to add a little bit more paint. So we always want to be working from a puddle. And I'm going to clean my brush out, get all that pigment out. And now I want some sort of a darker green. And so I'm grabbing that. And for this one, I don't need as much water, and you'll see why in a moment. But we just need a little puddle. We still want water. It still needs to be able to move around freely like this, so it's considered a puddle. Now we've got both of those. And we're actually ready to go. So I want to tell you about the brush real quick first though. Remember how we have just one brush, and it's a size 10, and it's a round brush which has the tip of the brush here, and the belly of the brush here is what holds the water. And when we use our brush, it's about pressure. So if I were to hold my hand like this, you would see the tip of my brush is quite small, maybe like a pen or a marker. I get a very tiny point to it. But it's about pressure. The more I push, the bigger the tip of the brush gets, and that just continues on until I'm into the belly of the brush. Okay, and so for small spaces like today, you'll see when we get to our stems, we're going to want to have our brush very vertical, very light on the tip of our brush as we run our brush along the stems. But when we're painting the actual leaves, and I'll go ahead and just show you while I talk here, we will get our green paint. I loaded my brush up with it. And I'll take the tip of the brush along the edge, but I'm also leaning into the belly of that brush, and look how quickly I actually filled that in. Now, if I were to take my brush instead and go like this, really slowly with the tip of my brush like this might be dry before I get to the other end, and I want time to play. So let's stop here while we've got two, because we definitely want them to be wet for this technique. And if it's pooling or puddling anywhere, you can touch your brush to your towel, and then come back and just lift up any extra paint. And now we're going to go into our darker green while this is wet. This is called a wet on wet technique. And we're just going to touch our paint. And you see that what happens is the water will pull the paint. I like to run the darker color along one side. I'm going to grab just a little bit more paint in my puddle here. Touch it here again if you want. And while this one's wet, we'll do the same thing. We can put some of it in here, maybe run it along one of the edges, and then just let it be. If you wanted to, while it's wet, you could take your brush and you could kind of blend these together a little bit. You've got options. If you let the water pull the paint, you'll get these funky lines. If you do that blending for it, you'll get more of a soft transition. And so now we'll just let those dry, and we're going to grab our light green paint and fill in the next two. And remember, we're doing it somewhat efficiently. And we're watching to see that the light is reflecting, so we can see that it's still wet, and we know that it'll pull our darker green paint when we get it in there. So now I've got my darker green paint again. I like to do the base of the leaf and then maybe run it along a side, and the same thing over here. Now, if you wanted to get technical about it, and I guess we kind of did, you could make the light source be on one side, so the darker part of the leaf, which would be the shadow, would always be on the other side. That's pretty good right there. We could let this dry first. It doesn't exactly matter if we keep our paint in control now. So when we need to do these tiny skinny lines, we need much less water. So if you were to clean out your brush and dry it, and then take your brush and put it in this little pile, notice I don't have very much water in this one, but I can freely move that puddle. And this is where we'll go light on the tip of our brush and just follow these lines. Just follow them down. If you accidentally sort of go off of your pencil line, when everything's fully dry later on, you can just erase your pencil. If your pencil is covered by watercolor paint, it's kind of locked in and it's there to stay. So this is it, and as I let it dry, it's going to look more like these. It's just going to continue, the water continues to pull the paint as it dries, so it looks different later. And you can get things like this. This one I actually touched a light green paint in after, so the darker green was wet, and I played with it. And just to show you that this is something where you can just sort of use this technique in some of your leaves, and then create a little sketch, a little doodle like this. And if you didn't want to use your brush for things like the stems, you always can take, I'll show you, either like a felt tip pen like this, or this is just like a regular sort of, is it like a ballpoint pen? And instead of doing your fine lines with paint, I always like to say, like, there's not a test. Like, no one knows, no one cares. And you can always feel free to do it with ink instead, which is going to give you more control and an easier thin line like this. And so you see, this line is still lovely. And I didn't have to do it with a paintbrush. So you see this one's a little bit thicker. And we can practice and get thinner than that. But you're free to always just use ink as well. So that's your tutorial, and I love to say, now do 10 of them. And the more you do them, the more you'll understand how much water and how much paint, and are you getting the effect that you want to see. So great job. See you next time.